yesterday we saw like what is container and why we need container, what role the container is going to play. If you don't have container, what we need to do, we need to write the code for socket listening and lifecycle management. So we want to take care of all the requests, and it also provides multi-threaded support. And container is going to take care of security by you can configure it in the XML, and it's also going to provide JSP support. All the JSP pages, right? In turn, it is going to be converted into .java files and then .plus files, and those .plus files are nothing but the service. It is going to do all those things. So today, right? I want to understand one thing. Like you wanted to run this program, or you already know these things, or you want to set up anything, because we will have something like you can share your screen so that we will try to do this MVC in your system directly. So you are interested to do, or just you want to see how it is working from my PC? Because I have already set up everything. So just if you wanted to see, then no problem. I can show how it works, everything. But you want to do some practicals in your system, you will try to do it.
Okay.
So how?
You can do one thing. You show in your system. Okay. And maybe export the project and give me.
Okay.
I can import in my machine.
Okay, then. No problem.
So because that way I can also like start doing myself instead of.
Yeah, that's what. Only if you try to start doing it, right? So it will be more interesting actually.
Yeah, that's what interesting, and I know so if I get problems anywhere, I know how to do that or ask you.
Yeah, from here afterwards, right? Like we will see a lot of practicals and listeners and all. There are a lot of listeners, attribute listener, context listener. So these things, if you try to run this from your system, only then you will be able to understand. Okay, this is how it is going to work. There is something called cookies and everything. Okay. So I will try to run this project and I will share to you. Yeah, you can import and you can run it as you said. So in MVC, what we are going to do is like we're going to have a model class and a service class, a view part, and a controller part. So how JDW fits into all this? So JDW application server includes both a web container and an EJB container. Tomcat is a web container, but not a full JDW application server.
Okay.
So we separate so why we need MVC framework? Let's go to this part, MVC. So we saw, right, there will be a front layer. Any application, if there will be a front layer, and there will be a service layer, and here will be a service layer, and persistent layer, right? So the front will act as a view, and service will act as the controller. Business validations and all those things will be done in the controller, and then we will have the model class. All the models will be having the processor. So this forms a model view architecture, so that if any business validations, right, if any business logic you want to reuse, you can have all our business code here.
Okay.
Or we can if any new model comes in, right, so we can can add all our services here, service codes here, and all our database we can separate here, like all our model classes, entities, domain entities, and hibernate mappings, everything we can keep it here. And friends, we can have all our JSP pages and servlets and JSP pages and CSS, HTML, and all those things, property files.
Okay.
By going through this framework, MVC framework, we can decouple the logic, and we can decouple the business logic from persistent, and from persistent logic from the front. So each and every layer will focus on its own intended purpose. Like view will focus only on view, presentation part, and service. Here we can write some class like something like validate service. Let's say if you pass account number, validate account number, something like that. So it's going to be a service like if you pass an account number, it is going to check and tell us it is going to return a boolean. It is true or false. If it is true, it is a valid account number. Input, it is going to take an account number. This could be a bank. Here we will send to the persistent, this account number we will send to the persistent, and then we will do some validations and we will return the boolean.
Okay.
Which is the public method.
Okay.
So yeah, let's see the MVC example. So this is the second slide, right? 3 we have the MVC. Let's go with 3. So now let us try to write a mini MVC, trying to deploy and build it and test it. So 4 steps we follow. First we will write a user view. First we will write a JSP page. JSP or HTML page from where we want to post the request, and which is the destination page or response, in which page we need to show the response. All those things we need to first decide. And then deployment environment, we want to have a Tomcat, and iterative development and testing we can follow any one of this approach, like iterative approach or agile approach, something. And we can have some testing framework to test it. So deploying and testing and opening and paste. So we will create one HTML, copy the file into deployment environment, create a deployment descriptor. Copy this HTML file. And we will create one XML file. In the XML file, we'll say like this will be the index.jsp page. And we will start the Tomcat and test the server. So here in this page, if you see, right, there's a body tag and there is a color, and the method action you could see, right, select b.do and method is post. Once we click the submit button, we are going to post the value of the color. It could be light, amber, brown or dark. Well, we will pass the value of this color to this select b.do servlet. Okay. So here we have the deployment descriptor. So if the URL ends with this one, if URL ends with select b.do, so here we have the mapping class, servlet class, who is responsible for handling the request. So the container will read, so the URL ends with this one, so it will pass the request to this one. Pass the request, it will create the request, and
in real time, generally they use annotations or this deployment descriptor generally. Like.
So if they are sure, like there won't be any change in the servlet, then they will go with annotations. If they are not sure, like there could be change in servlet or the request URL pattern, right? This URL pattern could change. Then they will go with configurations. If they are 100% sure, like this is the URL pattern and this is the servlet class who is responsible, then they will go with annotations directly.
And one more question I want to ask. Generally what they do here, right? The front-end people develop in parallel to the actual Java developers. So front-end people, they will develop, and Java people, they will develop parallelly. How do you have any idea? Like,
so what they will do? The business people will propose some solutions to the technical team will propose some solutions to the business people. So business people will first ask the wireframes, or what the other name for this one is screen templates. So the screen templates. So these templates will be HTML and JavaScript and CSS. All these things will be done by the design team. A mock-up screen. You could say like mock-up screen. So this design team will design all the CSS. This is how the index page is going to be. These are the different menu items we will have. This is the page where user will first see, and once he clicks on this button, he will land it to some other page like that. So design team will design it, and they will propose to the business team. They will review it, and if there are any change, right, they will let them know, so that again this design team will work on those HTMLs and release the next version of the wireframe, version 2.0. So once this is accepted, they will send it to the development team. So development team will make use of this HTML. They will put all this HTML and JS CSS in the web content folder, like in the presentation front layer, web content in the front layer of the application. Web content folder, they will put it, and they will once there will be some button, right? Click on button, click something like that, right? So once they click on that, they will write some code. Action equal to, it should come to my servlet, hello servlet, something like that, my custom servlet.
Okay.
So all those things they will fine tune inside the HTML code.
For example, like we should know what is the name of the fields, right? Like if you want to do your programming in servlet parallel to the front end team, like whatever is there in HTML or JavaScript.
Yeah.
If you want to do some action on this field,
okay.
So actually we should know the name of the fields, etc., right?
Yeah. See, in their template, right, they'll have just this one. Like they'll have something called div will be there, and here something input.
Yeah.
Input type equal to something text, and that's it. Only this much. Only small things will be there.
Yeah.
And there, this is sample actually. So our developer side, what they will do, like they want this parameter to be posted to servlet. Then our developer will add extra tags, like it should be a name, something like this. He will add these parameters, and he will try to add a form like this, and he will add the action, and he will post it. Action equal to something, action name, servlet name, and then he will post the request to the servlet.
Okay.
So developer will fine tune according to the see, design is there. Now we need to implement the logic, business logic, right? So he will fine tune the HTML pages. He won't change the design. So here CSS, he won't touch the CSS. He won't touch the color.
Okay.
This input will be like there will be some separate CSS file input, and it will be like this color, background, everything. So this he won't touch, but he will just add few attribute names and passing the request to the servlet alone. So such that design will be as such, but just he will post and get the request along that.
Okay. So all this HTML and CSS will be in web content folder.
Yes, web content folder. Yes. HTML, CSS, everything will keep it in the web content folder. Also, if any CSS images, everything will put it into the web content folder. So in this HTML, right, we are going to submit the value to this base2.servlet, which will come to this class. We select.java. Here we will get the request.get parameter. Get the value of the color. It could be orange, or it could be dark brown, amber, light. Any one of that. We are going to pass it to the model class. Okay. So the color we will pass it to the model class, and from model class we will get the value of that color, and then again we will set it to the result.jsp and send it to. Okay. Let's come from here. So here we got the color, right? So here we are just printing the color, but this color, which will be a dark or amber or light, we can pass it to the database, and we can get the we can get the value of it, or we can get the model of that, and we can set it to the response page, and we can send it back to the UI. So browser sends the request data to the container. Container finds the correct servlet based on the URL, passes the request to the servlet. Servlet calls the B select for else. The output outputs the response. Container returns the page on the happy user. So this will understand actually. So here in this diagram, you see there is one controller class here. Servlet is the controller, and this one is the model class. The expert. So if you pass a color to this expert, right, he will tell which brand of beer is that, and he will return it. So he is an expert who is going to do. Example, let's say we will pass the account number. This is an HDFC bank account, HDFC application. Okay, we will pass the HDFC credit card account number. He will check whether this account number is valid or not. So he is a HDFC credit card expert. So we'll check the validity. We need to pass the card number alone. He will check in this database whether this account number exists, this credit card number exists in the database or not. If it exists, it will return true. Else it will return false. Validity is like that. So first step is we will send a request to container, container, and container we are going to present the form.html where he will enter the account number. So this will be posted again to sent again to the client where he will enter the account number. And again account number, so he entered the account number, again he clicks submit button. So we are passing the account number here which comes to the servlet, and from that servlet we are calling the expert method, like this method, validate the account number, and we have passed the account number. It is going to return true or false to the request object. And again we are going to see which is the destination page. So I got the response. So he is a valid account holder. I want to show it to the client, right? So you would have configured the result.jsp. In that we are going to set that model object and send it to the container. Container is going to render it to the client back. So client makes a request. Okay, this is our fine. So browser sends the request data to the container. Container finds the correct servlet based on the URI, passes the request to the servlet. So
container is, generally container is like a application server, right? Or
container is a software. Application server is WebSphere. Container here is Tomcat server. Container web container and EJB container. This web container is Tomcat container, which is to handle the client request and response. That EJB container, right? That which we will see down the line. EJB container to handle the life cycle of entity beans, session beans, stateful session beans, stateless session bean, all those things. This container is a web container actually. Web request. It can handle web request and web response. All those things. Okay. So here we have some methods. What is going to happen? Here we will post all the things and we will submit this page to this container. Container is going to read the method. So it is post method and do select post, right? So we have mapping class here. Be do select in the sense it is going to map to be select. So there we have do get and do post method, and since the method is post, a do post will be executed here. Okay. So do post will be executed as we saw before yesterday. Container starts a new thread to handle the request and request to that thread. Okay, container is going to start a new thread and gives the request object to that thread, which this request will be passed to the servlet, and the servlet is going to perform valid account number check, and it is going to return, which the thread is going to bind that response to this response object and send it back to the container. The container sends the response back to the web server, the client. Okay. So now we will see what are the different APIs are available or there in the advanced Java, like for servlet and JSP. So the base one is this one, HTTP servlet, which will have the service method, init method, and deploy method. The service method will have do get and do post, all those things, which extends the generic servlet, which in turn extends the servlet. So here we have these things in our servlet API, and okay, like this you could say. So in HTTP servlet, we have these methods like do get, do post, do action, all the methods for each and every method type. We have the corresponding methods. Yeah.
This is in generic servlet. Okay, HTTP servlet. Okay.
HTTP servlet, yes. Maybe set last modified. We can also see what is the last modified date and time, I think.
Okay.
So there are three other interfaces like servlet request and servlet response, HTTP request and HTTP response object. I will try to see that. HTTP response have a lot of. So here we have, okay, we can add cookies to the, we can add cookies and we can add parameters. So whatever you see here, right, request dot.
Yeah.
get content, like all those things. All these methods are from HTTP response. So, so mostly which one we will use is like get set parameters and set attributes or this method. We will set some attributes here, and we will send this request. We will send this request from one page to other page, so that in the other page we can get the attribute and display it to the UI.
Yeah.
So let me, yeah, I have one sample. Let me show you just a minute.
Yeah, for whole session we can set session variable also, right? For the
Yeah, yes. So I want to do this one. I want to request to this page. Okay, let us see it again. So we'll try to complete this slide and then we will come back. So what's working so far? The browser sends request to container. Okay, all that's fine. Let me go back. So this deployment. So we saw how to create a simple MVC, right? We want to have a model who will be an expert who will talk to database, and view, which will be a JSP page or HTML page, and a controller who will be our servlet. So request will come to our servlet, who is a controller. From a view, we will send to a model class to look up some data or do some validations, or it could be some CERD operations like create, update, delete, or any process and DB operations, and we will get it and we will display it to the UI. We will set the response. We will set the data returned by the model object to the response object, and we will send it to the UI. So now deploying a JSP page, like if you want to deploy, right, there will be a web app folder in the Tomcat directory where we will put all our folders, put our project, so that once you restart the server, right, it will read all the projects in the web app folder, and it will try to deploy it automatically, and it will show it in the UI.
okay.
So we don't compile the JSP.
In Tomcat or any, it will be deployed as WAR file, right? Web archive or
Yeah, it is a web archive file when it comes to enterprise applications. In EJP, right? In Blackspace or JBoss or or uh, or Blackspace or WebSphere application server, then there we will deploy a WAR file or ER file. But here directly we can put the folder into the web app folder, so that it will read it actually.
in your project, what deployment framework you are using? Are you using like build
WebSphere.
tool? Are you
Build
using
tool we use
Maven?
Maven. Yeah, Maven.
Maven. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you want me to create applications using Maven? So
No,
if you want, I can do it. Okay.
anything, yeah, fine. As of now, I'm doing with Maven and Gradle also.
Gradle.
We
Okay.
started Gradle,
Okay.
but
Just a minute.
most
Then I'll open Spring tool directly. So there we have all the Maven and everything. We will try to create one MVC project. Okay.
yeah,
And yeah, we will try to create using the Maven build tool.
yeah.
And in the meantime, let's see what is the next. So next we will see about lifecycle methods after completing one mini MVC, and we will also see about server config, server context, HTTP methods, redirecting, and request dispatch. So all those things. We'll close this. Let's create one project in Maven, project, and so here let us choose a web app. There is something called web app, right? So it will be a web application. Like if you want to go with quick start, then you can go with the standalone application, but we are going web application, right? So let me say in Java, so com dot one dot. Okay, let's finish. So here we got what's that thing? Can you make a session in the evening? Yeah.
Will be web archetype, I think.
It should be a web project.
Yeah.
Okay, here we have a book. Okay, here we have it. This
Yeah.
was necessary. So no problem. It was showing some error. Just try to deploy it in the Tomcat. So if we have form.xml, okay, we configure it there, right? So I think not required. Just you'll right click and run as the application and we'll see.
So this Spring Toolkit gives you even application server to run, or?
Yeah. See, yeah, it also comes with server deployment edition something. So yeah, we don't want to have. It is very helpful actually. So just if I configure everything in form.xml, right? I don't want to add any jars and it automatically downloads and it forms a repository. I think you know all those things. So yeah, server also comes inbuilt. Actually, in turn it is Tomcat server, a web server, not an application server. If you want to have, we want to add a new server here, like it could be a JBoss or any other servers if you want, and you can have it actually.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we will create one VM servo RO controller. Car controller and let me make it com.org package. And then I'll go next. I want only do post method and I don't want all those things. Only. Okay. So here we have one default cut controller. Actually, we need to include.
Yeah, in form.xml. Like
yeah, we need to include all those things.
Maybe if we go to Maven Central or.
So it will take bit time. Okay, what I'll do, right? I'll create a dynamic web project now for now. Okay, to show them mini MVC, and then I will because it will take some more time, right? So it is advanced, Java, simple, don't have. Yeah. So remove this, and here we have our app, and let me create one index of this and says this fine, get the index, I'm going post of form action equal to and make sure that equal to post get number and input type equal to input type equal to okay. Let me keep it password type and name and give the parameter name equal to get card number and here we'll put input side equal to submit value equal to validate credit card. And here input one rate. So okay, in our source, create one server, say combat party and create card value data. Okay. Here we have all those things. Let me remove everything. I'll get what we don't get that. So you will get request dot get parameter, right? So say credit card number, and we will post it to, we will send this to another model object to validate it. So we will create a model object. I'll create a separate package. Form dot or c dot no dl model, and here create this card expert and so here we'll have validate create this card, which will be an int or just give it a string global type. Create this card which will return boolean. Okay, okay, return void. Okay, this is a public method. The OLN and we'll do like if credit card dot length equal to 16, then we can here we are going to here we'll open false. Just simple check. You could have a lot of validations, like you can also send this credit card to DB to send to database and validate. There could be a third-party server like SiteMinder, right? SiteMinder or like LDAP server, where all LDAP, like a repository of all the credit card information will be there. Like data center of the HDFC bank or any other bank. You can send it to that link, like HTTP that LDAP server, and we could send a C parameter, this card number. This app and card number can say. So now let us test this. So valid credit card, yeah, right? So validate. We want to first see the instance of validator. So RE validator, valid. So it's model of the expert. Yes, sorry. Credit card. So now we can have a print writer, PRINT, the writer, and OOT, response dot get writer, and auto print check. Okay, we could say if check yeah, and you can have it like this. You valid count HOM here. I could say please check and we enter your card info, something like that. That's it. So tomorrow, if you want to add any new logic, right, then we can add in our expert. So you can so that we have separated. See, we have a separate model class. Tomorrow, like debit card, we want to validate a debit card. Then we can have another one expert in our model class. So that here, let's say there is some other application or to another bank. Okay, the same logic also they want to use. So we can share this file to them, so they can validate both credit card, debit card, and everything. So if you have the separate, right, if we separate the business logic with the application or front layer or persistent layer, so it will be very easy, reusable and plug and play sort of thing, like a component level design it will give actually. So now what we will do, we will try to post the credit card number. Yeah, here, right, okay, do post only. So I think everything should work fine. Okay, here we want to give the card number. Okay, now let us open the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. Oh, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we give this information. We give this credit card and we enter the credit card. That's it. So tomorrow you can also add few more logics here, and we have more things like we can redirect the request to some other page.
Yeah.
So if it is false, right, then we can redirect the request and yeah, we can do all those things here. So now let us see that part. Okay, how to redirect and all those things. What is the life cycle of servlet? What are different configs we can have and all those things. So servlet's life is to service the client. A servlet's job is to take the client request and send back the response. Request might be simple, get me the welcome page, or it might be a complex, get me my shopping cart, checkout information and all those things. So servlets are controlled by containers. Servlets, the container's overall role in servlet's life, it creates a request and response object, creates or allocates a new thread for servlet, calls the service method, passing the request and response, referring as the ultimate. Okay. Service method, it is there in the HTTP, HTTP servlet, right? There we have the service method. Service method figures out which servlet method to be called, either get method or post method sent by the client. Servlet uses a response object to write out the response to the client. Service method completes, so thread dies, returns the container. Okay. So servlet's life. So we need to know like when servlet class loaded, when did a servlet constructor run, how long does the servlet object leave, when should your servlet initialize the resource, when should it clean up its resource. So all these processes are taking place internally by the container. So we will see those are all lifecycle methods. If you try to understand the lifecycle methods, right, we will know okay when a constructor is running, when the servlet class is getting loaded, and how long the servlet object leaves in the servlet in the heap memory, and when should your servlet initialize the resource, when it is getting initialized, and all those things. So servlet lifecycle, there only one main state called initialize. If servlet is not initialized, then it either been initialized or been destroyed, or it simply does not exist. So if request comes, an instance is created, which means a servlet is initialized. It is up and running.
Okay.
So servlet lifecycle method, we have init, service, do post, do get, and destroy. So service, like only three methods: init, service, and destroy. Each request runs in a separate thread. So each request, right? If you send 5 requests, 5 threads will be created, 5 lifecycle methods will be there, and 5 pairs of request and response objects will be created, and it will be managed. This lifecycle methods will be managed by the container.
Can we use service instead of do get or do post?
Yeah, you can do that. No problem. We can have service method also. No problem. But it is advised like we should not use service method directly, but we want to use we want to override either do get or do post. Okay. Service method. Same like request and response.
Okay.
So in beginning, there will be some section called loading and initializing the servlet. When container starts, it looks for deployed web app. Then it starts searching for servlet class files. Finding the class file is the first step. There is some lookup operation like if you see a JVM once it starts, right, there are 3 types of loaders: bootstrap loader, and external library loader, and class path loader. So these loaders, right, it will search for .class files or a compiled file from the class path. So it will load these drivers and keep it in the memory, load these class files and keep it in the memory, so that it can be serviced based on the client's request. So finding the class of the loading or finding the class of the first step, loading the class of the second step, and it happens either on the container startup or first client use. Servlet service method will not run until the servlet is fully loaded, initialized. Okay. Once all the class files are loaded, right, it is kept in the heap memory. Only then service method will be called. Third, initialization. When an object becomes a servlet, it will have the reference to this object, servlet config, and servlet context. Okay. So just a minute, I will tell you. Okay. So what will happen is like we have servlet, right? And before the servlet, like that, it is just, we will call it as an object. So let's say there is a we had a servlet called credit credit card value day, right? So container, it will create the instance of this card validator. So it is going to create it and it is going to keep this object reference in it. So now at this stage it is object. Once you create, right, it is going to be an object. And in web.xml, right, we have something called, we can configure the servlet context and servlet configuration. There are 2 objects, okay, apart from FTP request and response, there are 2 objects like servlet config FIG and servlet context. Servlet context is at the application scope. Okay. And it is servlet config is at the servlet scope. So it is tied to servlet. Okay. Okay. So
We use this.
Come again? What is the use of this? Yeah, that's what I'm telling. So let's say this is a normal credit card validator, right? So if we don't use this annotation, what you will do, you want to do this configuration in the web.xml file. Here we need to do it. So same thing, there could be some database connector, DB manager. Okay. DB manager servlet. Yeah. And we put like this, servlet hyphen class. So DB manager com dot this DB manager could be in some package like dbc dot DB manager and end of the servlet class.
Okay.
I can have some configurations like init param before ending this. Init param
Yeah.
1, 2, 3 like localhost and my username and password and so all those things like roles is the privileges, admin role or a normal user, something like that. You can have it here and then servlet will end.
Yeah.
So this is one. So all these parameters, right? All these parameters, these are like key and value pairs. Okay. All these parameters you can get it by calling the instance of this one. So all these parameters will be set into this object.
Okay.
So once, so while the container creates the instance of this one, there are 3 lifecycle methods like init,
Service and rest.
yeah. In this init, we also have another one overloaded method called servlet config.
Yeah.
Through this init method, we can get the parameters whatever we have configured in our web.xml file. Through this init config method, through this object, we can get whatever the parameters we configured in our web.xml file. Let me show you what we will do. Write one. Say company or company server. Company server, let's say DB manager itself. Okay, I'll keep it DB manager itself. DB manager. Class I'll keep it as com dot org dot DB manager.
Yeah.
Okay, let me keep it as database. And I will keep it database. Yep. And let it be, let the URL end with DB.
Okay.
Data or else let it end with database of all. So here we will have username and password. Root or it could say like what is the database I'm going to use, MySQL, and I might use version 5.8, something like that.
Okay.
Okay, I want to keep it here. Just a minute, I'm opening one example of this. So we were talking about this config and okay, what? So where this? So if it is an ordinary object, it will be there in the heap. So once it becomes a servlet, right? We will have reference to the config, servlet config, and servlet context. So when an object becomes a servlet, when it will become a servlet is like if we have reference to the servlet config and servlet context. As a servlet, I have a special privilege beside a secret handshake, like able to log the events, get reference to other resources, and store some attributes and other servlets for other servlets. So if it is a normal object, we don't have these privileges and all, right? If it is a servlet, so who created the servlet? Like container is going to create that. If container creates and converts the object into servlet, right? We can have using that servlet, we can log, we can get reference to other attributes, we can store some attributes and all those things. So what I was searching is in the content that I know that okay. Just a minute. I search for around. Okay, it should be like this. It should be a name value pair. So it should be like this. Let me do that. It should be a key value pair actually. What we were doing before is directly we were giving the values there, but it should be a key and value. Okay, I will say DB name and I will say here version. What is the version we are going to use? Or our application is going to be compatible with.
Okay.
Like my application, I use MySQL and I want operating system to be Windows 7 plus or Windows XP, something like this, and my operating system bit version should be the 4-bit operating system. All these parameters I can set it. Bit version, something like this. Yeah, bit version and this is the 4-bit. Okay. Now, so here we have our the DB manager, right? Let me create the instance of, we create a class called DB manager in our ORC package. So let finish. In the post method, or if you try to override the init method, right? You could see that config here, this one. So let us try to get the configurations, or let us try to print the configurations, whatever we get, right? That are printed here. Config dot get init parameter or enumerate. I will enumerate it.
Okay.
For string say or into string name. Yes, animation target. Okay. So we have to do try to get one parameter first, and then we will enumerate and get everything. Config dot get parameter, get init parameter. I'll tell that what is the parameter name. We could tell like DB name. What is the DB name? We're gonna use this parameter. So this is going to be a string DB name, and we will try to print it. So yeah, try to print it. So we can access all the parameters also using this init parameter. Let's just try to get the parameter like OS. Or else we can have these variables set here so that we can send this to the response from initialization, like until this one, and here get the print writer out dot out equal to response dot get writer out dot print. You can say this begin name. Let's say database used in your project, something like that, are supported. Database SUPPOR period supported, and operating system. Okay, operating system supported. SUPPOR period. Okay, we will keep this in 1. That's it. So we need to post the request to this page, right? So we will have in same button, in same page, we will have 2 forms. Okay, I'll put one para here, and then I'll copy the GP. What is the request? We need to post it to our request should end with this servlet, and okay, pattern is this one, right? Period database. So we need to have that pattern. We have the post button. Let's just try to deploy it now. So this one, it will go to other page. Database supported as MySQL and operating system supported. So that is whatever we configured for this particular servlet alone.
Okay.
So similarly, for the whole application, right? For the whole application, for all the servlets, we have something called context param.
Okay.
So which is name and value. Okay, which is common for all the servlets.
Okay.
Here we could say like application name.
Okay.
Application name. Let's say like this could be RESTUARA and the restaurant app. So yeah, let me don't give a name here. So how to get this context parameters, like same servlet, same 8 methods, we have something called configuration context. Get configuration, servlet context. From this context, we want to get attribute. Attribute name, whatever we set here, right? Application underscore name. Let us keep one here, string app name. We'll keep it null, and or it captures to string, and then we'll say the application name here, and then we will give one break here, para here, so that it will come a new para, and here we will say welcome to the application name. That's it.
Okay.
So now let us deploy it, and in this case we will keep some meaningful name. And restaurant. Welcome to null. It's getting null. Okay, we will see why it is null. It should be init parameter. So it's not an attribute. It is init parameter because see here we use parameters, right? Param. So it should be an init parameter. So let us try now. Actually, these are very old actually. So, but we won't. But it is basics. These are the basics like application, solid config and solid context and all those things. But
Yeah.
we'll try to. Okay, welcome to restaurant app. You see now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we should try to know is like the servlet config is tied to one particular servlet config, config object for it. But this context is at the application context scope.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah. So why do we care about initialization details? Because somewhere between the constructor and init method, servlet isn't coding the state. So it will be it will not be initialized, or it might be initializing. So we have a separate method called init, which is between the constructor and service method. So in this init method, so once constructor is done right, it will pass through this init method, and then it will go to the service.
Okay.
So all our initialization section, like reading from the properties or making the application ready, all those things we can do it in the init method. Okay. So we might have sort of initialization code like get up web app config info, or looking up the reference or other part of the application that will fail. Okay. So in this init method, right, we can have all the initialization code like getting web app configuration information, or looking up the reference to other part of the application that will fail if you want to run it too early in this. Okay, those are not required. So what does a begin servlet by you? So we will get a reference to this servlet config, which will be per servlet, and servlet context, which will be for one web application. But a servlet's real job is to handle the request. That's when a servlet life has a meaning. Servlet config and servlet context exist only to support your servlet one and true job to handle the client request. So here in config we can have some init parameters for one particular servlet. Context we can have for whole application. Okay. Request and response key for everything, and argument to service. Okay. This is the HTTP request method, and HTTP request method determines do get or do post. Okay, this is fine. This is fine. Response is what goes back to the client and ping the browser gets and passes senders the user. Okay. So we have two choice to output the HTML to the browser. One is like print writer and servlet output stream.
Yeah.
Here output stream, right? It will be in bytes. It will be in bytes. We will write, but here the above one, first one, like we will just if we pass a string, right? It will be converted into bytes internally, and it is going to render it in the UI.
Okay.
So you can get the response headers, and you can add the values to the response. So these methods, you can make use of those methods like here. You have the response, right? So you can add some attributes. You can add some data headers like some authentication key. Also, you could add some signatures. You could add to that header so that you will get it in the browser side. So browser side that header will be kept at the cache memory, browser cache for further validations and all those things.
Yeah.
So set whether overrides existing value, add header will add additional value to that list. Sometimes you don't want to deal with a response yourself. You can either redirect the request to completely different URL, or you can dispatch the request to some other JSP in your web app.
Yeah.
So redirect is like, I'm not going to handle your request anymore. I'm going to send it to some other application. He will take care.
Yeah.
Okay, so let us do one example. Rather than print write and all the thing, I'm going to comment this code and let us redirect to google.com. Response on dot and redirect http on www. So we are going to do anything, just everything is going to end. So all the once request we redirect to some other URL, right? All this servlet and everything will be dead. Again, we can't come back. So once we click on the request, it's loading. Yeah, it got the Google page, right? It got redirected to other page. Suppose in your application itself, you want to redirect to some other module or some other servlet or some other page. That you could do it using request dispatcher.
Which one, sorry, again?
So here you are entirely redirecting from your application to other application.
Yeah.
So let's say like example I could say like we have one shop, okay? We are running one shop.
Yeah.
Someone comes and asks some grocery, like I need this much, this many cases, this many, let's say 5 liters of milk. But we are saying like we don't have it. You can go and get it in some other shop that side. That is redirecting the request to some other third party, some other one.
Yeah.
But the request dispatcher is like, yes, I have it. I don't have it in my shop. I have it in my godown. Let me go and get it. Please wait.
Okay. Okay.
So it's I have it internally. I'm going to redirect to some other module, so where you can get it done.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Request dispatcher, DISPAT, dispatch, and here could say request dot get request dispatcher, and this is the destination page or a servlet. Let's say we will have another one page here, JSP, JSP. Restaurant, right? Restaurant, okay. Let's say restaurant. Inside restaurant, we can have several departments, right? Like parcel. We can have some parcel department. Parcel.jsp. Okay. Welcome to parcel. Welcome to the section of the restaurant. Okay. And let's come back and let us redirect to parcel parcel.jsp. It should be small. And we need to forward the request and response to that page. Request, response. And that's it. Now let us run it. So yeah, we will forward the request response to this JSP page, right? Inside this JSP, we will have a reference to this request actually. We can get the parameters, whatever we pass it, or we can get the servlet context dot get init parameter, and you could say application name also even here,
Okay.
because we are forwarding the request response object. You could see, right? We are forwarding the request to this page. In this page, we will have access to that request and response object, and we could print that also here.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Now it has done that. Okay, we're down to parcel section of this one. We have redirected, not redirected. We have sent it to some other page. We have sent the request and response to some other page. But initially we were redirecting to different part of the different application like google.com, right? It will take care of the request and response. But now we are sending to JSP page. Okay, let us go back to the slide. Servlet redirect makes the browser to do the work. So we will give the URL to the browser. Browser is going to render that page. Redirect lets the servlet off the hook completely, which means it is going to shut down all the requests further from that previous URL. After deciding that it can't do the work, the servlet simply calls send redirect method. And request dispatch does the work on the server side. The biggest difference between the redirect and request dispatch: redirect makes the client to do the work. Client in the sense, the browser to redirect to some other new URL, where while request dispatch makes something else on the server to do the work. Server, like we will forward the request to some other page or some other module or some other servlet inside the same application. So he will take care of servicing the request, servicing the client. About this section, like beginning a web app. So we will little bit dig deeper, and we have two more classes on servlet, and then we will move into JSP.
Okay.
So even JSP, right, we will see about this initialization and listeners, attributes, setting attributes, and all those things, and we will write some Java code there.
Okay.
And we will try to see. So till now, what we've seen, like we saw about container, how container is going to take care of life cycle of the servlet, and how JSP page posts the request, gets the request, init method, and servlet config and servlet context. How we can configure few parameters in the web.xml file for a servlet and for whole of application. So now let's see what are the different listener methods, how we can add attributes, and what are different scopes, and how to have a thread safe collection. Like let's say two threads trying to access the same file at a time. So one thread is trying to read the data from the file, the other thread is trying to delete the data from the file. Same file. So there could be some data collision and all, right? So how to prevent that? So we want to use some safe objects or scoped objects. We want to make use of that in order to overcome all this situation. So we will see about those things. So servlet initialization, like this we saw, right? We can initialize the servlet using init params. Here, be param test and test init params. We have something called email ID, and we can have the email ID like our application name. We can have some email ID which is tied to the servlet alone. And in servlet code for servlet config parameters, if you want to get right, you can get it using servlet config get servlet config dot get init parameter. We will give you the key if we give you the value. And so here this first round, it denotes like it is a normal object. Once a constructor code is executed and servlet init method is executed and servlet configuration file is servlet config object is ready, then it will become a servlet. And it will perform the service method. And once the service is done, and service method is executed, that is do get and do post method completed its job. Then the destroy method will be called. So it will go again back to servlet and again back to the object state, and garbage collector will come and it will remove this object from the heap memory of the JVM.
Okay.
So when container initializes the servlet, it makes a unique servlet config for the servlet.
Okay.
The container reads the servlet init parameter from the deployment descriptor and gives them to the servlet config object, then passes the servlet config to the servlet init method. So servlet init method parameters are read only once when container initializes the servlet. So it's only read only once actually. That is when application context is loaded. When container makes a servlet, it reads the deployment descriptor and creates the name value pair for the servlet config. The container never reads the init parameter again. Once the parameter are in servlet config, they wouldn't be read again unless they, okay, what they're trying to tell here is, so once you configure the init parameters in the servlet, right?
Yeah.
So you restart the server, first time it loads. Again, if you want to change it, you need to change it again you want to redeploy it. Only then it will be working, the init parameters. So alternative for this is attributes. You can get attribute and you can set attribute. Set attribute is like it will override the existing attributes.
Okay.
So let's just go to the code and do something here. So let's see here, right? So what I'm trying is, like get init parameter, I'm trying to set some parameters, init parameters for the servlet config. But I don't find any method called set.
Okay.
I don't find any method called set because it is set only once in the web.xml file. Every time if you request for this get parameter, right? It is get init parameter, it is going to give you a same value. So there is something called set attributes. We can make use of attributes in order to get and set it. Let us see that. So this is the pictorial representation, like container is going to read the web.xml file and it is going to create a new servlet config object, and it is also going to read all the init parameters from the deployment descriptor web.xml. It is going to form a key value pair, and it is going to give this key value pair to this servlet config.
Okay.
And it creates a new servlet instance, gives this servlet config with key value pair, everything what it has read from the web.xml, right? All those things it is going to give it to the servlet instance. So from the servlet instance, we can get this key and value.
Okay.
As we did it here. Okay. So all parts of my web app should have access to the email. So that's what. If all parts of the web application, all servlets should have access to this email ID, then we can put it in the servlet context. How can a JSP page get servlet init parameter? Context init parameter to the rescue. Okay. Servlet context init parameter works just like servlet init parameter, except context parameters are available to the entire web app, not to the single servlet.
Yeah.
Okay. So how to get the servlet context, like using get servlet context dot get into the parameter, we can pass the email ID, it will print it. Or from servlet config also we can get the context.
Yeah.
So config is for one servlet and context. Okay. So here is the difference, like if it is context, right? We will put it directly the child of the web app. But if it is servlet init parameter, we will put it for each and every servlet.
Okay.
And we will access using get servlet context dot get in parameter. Here get servlet config dot get in parameter.
Okay.
If you need to run some code that always runs before any servlet or JSP starts or dies, then we have something called listeners who will listen for an event. Okay, he will listen for some event. Let's say application load event. So it will listen for that load event and notify the class so that once the class gets notified, right, there will be some contract methods which will be executed. Okay, that is like it's we have something like notify and listener. Okay, so listener will listen for particular event like application load or a request is coming in. So we have something called request listener.
Okay.
In the request, we are going to add some attributes. We have something called request attribute listener. A new session is created. We have something called session listener. In session, you are going to put few attributes. We have put few parameters. We have called session binding listener. So when application context is loaded, right? Application context is getting started. It is getting initialized. So we want to, while it is initializing, we want to add some parameters at that particular time. So we have some listeners who will listen to that particular event and will notify us. So this servlet context listener will listen when application context is loaded, which means when you start the server, when you start your Tomcat server, right, it will read the application and it will initialize that. It will start the application. At that time, this listener will listen, and we have two contract methods like initialization and destruction, which we need to override. We make a separate class, not a servlet or a JSP, that can listen for two key events in the servlet context life, initialization and destruction. So here you could see my servlet context listener, which implements servlet context listener class, and here interface, servlet context listener interface. We have two contract methods like context initialize and context destroy. When servlet context is getting initialized, right, once you start the server, that event will be notified to this class. And
so
this class
is the entire app or
entire app. Context in the sense application context, entire app.
Servlet context. Okay.
Yeah, entire app. So here, rather than doing in XML, right, we have something called context param, init param, something like context. So rather than going with this parameter way, like this, context param, we can have like this, interfaces. This code programmatically configuring the context parameters. This is a declarative way where we are declaring all the context parameters in the configuration. But here it is a name value pair. Only we can have some name value pair. We can't have any objects here in the configuration. But here we can create DB manager object itself. Connection itself we can create it here. So while again you are restarting server, right? Or you are stopping the server, at that time we can close all the database connections and all those ports. We can reduce the resources, whatever we have. And we can also run the garbage collector so that he will remove the heap memory. Okay, so for that we want to configure my servlet context listener in the web.xml file. So once we configure that, right, so that time the listener will start listening for that start event and the end event. Once it is getting started, server is getting started, an event will be generated, which will be notified to this my servlet listener class. So here we have this context initialized. While context is getting initialized, we have the object which is getting, we are creating a new object called dog, and we are setting it at the servlet context scope. So servlet context scope, we are putting the here we are just putting FOOBAR or email ID or application name, and application would be restaurant app. A simple string, right? String we are putting it here. But here, if you see, we are putting an object itself. We are creating a new dog object, and we are setting as an attribute to the servlet context. So that anywhere in your application, right, you can get servlet context dot get init parameter get attribute dog. You can tell dog, get attribute dog. It will return you a dog type object. From that you can get the breed name of the dog. Just we will see this example. Just let's stop this one. So I have application context listener here, and we have one SOP, system output printer, DB connection initialize, and DB connection closed for this application. Let us try to start the server, and we will see whether it is getting printed or not. So, control. Yeah. So select context attribute added. Dog they are adding it here, right?
Mm.
Where does it come from? Select initialize. Sending select request initialize. Okay. So this request, why it came is because this URL came. So since this URL came into picture, so a request is sent to this application which is running in a Tomcat server. We have this request listener. So this is getting printed actually. Request initialize, and we are getting from the header right, from the request side, we are getting the address of the remote, and we are printing it here. So before this request comes in, we have this context attribute listener, which is coming from here. So these are some listener methods. When you add some attributes into the listener, we have some listener method, attribute added, attribute removed, attribute is replaced. When application context is loaded, we have few listeners, DB connection initialized, application initialized, and all those things. So we need to configure all these things in our web.xml file. Only then it will work actually. So here we have all our listener, application context listener.
Can you again explain this listener and context? Sorry. Application context listener.
Application context listener, application attribute listener. Two things are there.
Okay.
So
application context listener is where it is from servlet context, right?
yeah. Whenever you restart the server, right, it will run it. So wait, just a minute. I'll implement the.
Yeah, that's why I was just confused. Yeah, okay. Servlet context.
Servlet context.
Okay. Yeah, no.
Now let us again deploy it.
So normal listeners are also loaded at runtime, like when the server starts, or
normal listeners listen, I'm not getting.
so okay, there is or listeners all like they load at startup.
Yeah, listeners. Yeah, they will keep on listening. So we deployed one application, right? So there was some change in the application context. So that is listened here. So this method here we can have all initializations and DB connection initialized. So this method is here. This statement is here actually. DB connection, database connection initialized for the application.
Yeah.
So third context attribute added, where this one comes is because you are adding some attribute, right? We are adding some attribute to the context. For that we have separate listener. If you there are two things here, context listener and context attribute listener. Context attribute listener, this servlet context attribute listener. This is one interface, and servlet context listener is another interface. When application context is loaded, this method will be executed. If you add any attribute to the context, right? If you set any attribute to this context, this listener will be listening.
Okay.
So solid context attribute added, because what we added a DB manager here.
Okay.
Here we added one attribute. So let me comment this. We won't add anything. So it won't. This method won't be listened. And now let us see. See, okay. Even now a dog comes, right? So where we are adding this dog, I think in DB connection we are adding it. So here I think we are adding. We are adding somewhere the dog object. Okay, request, saving manager, servlet, my session list. Okay, here there is another one application. So two listeners. Here also we have one context listener, right? So there is one. I'll try to remove this one.
Okay.
Or else I'll try to remove this one from the web.xml. My request listener, context listener, and here it is, my context. So yeah, only one method, only one. Even then there is some other listener. So this one, it is just Jasper actually. It is adding some. So we are not. So we are done with this one. These two attributes are added by the at the Java code, actually, at the Java level, it is adding it. So this is important. Like we need to configure the listener, my servlet context listener in the web.xml file, so that when the application context is loaded, this will be listened, and this contract methods, the my context listener class, which implements the servlet context listener, will be notified for this event, and we will add the attributes. Anything. So if you add if you want to know when your attribute is getting added, what is the attribute which is getting added? For that we have a separate listener. Servlet context attribute listener. And this context level. And then if request is coming in, so that time we have request is coming into the servlet. That time we have request listener. Okay. In your request, if you try to set some attribute, right? We have something called request attribute listener. So request listener. Request attribute listener. If you try to add some attributes to the request. So similarly, we have session listener, HTTP session listener, and if you try to bind some attribute to that, if you try to add some attributes to that session, right? We have this HTTP attribute listener who will listen for that event and it will let you know. Okay, HTTP binding listener, and so we have two listeners on session alone. The plain old HTTP attribute listener is just a class that want to know when any type of attribute has been added or removed or replaced in the session. So, an attribute listener, it exists so that attribute itself can know when it has been added or removed from the session. So just see the slide, you can understand the difference, right? First thing is like attribute itself needs to know when I am added into the session. When I am attribute, like they're going to add me to the session. Okay, so we have a listener, session attribute listener, which will be notified like when it is added and it is removed, and it is when it is added and when it is removed. Okay. So attribute itself need to know when I am added into the session, when I am removed from. That's some. Okay. We want to understand this one. So let me comment this. I will make HTTP binding listener. So we need to implement the contract method. Value bound and value unbound. For this HTTP listener, right? HTTP session attribute ATTRI BOT LSCARNR. So HTTP session binding listener, HTTP session attribute listener. Two methods, two listeners, two interfaces are there. So if you like attribute listener is similar to the servlet context attribute and request attribute listener. So when you add any attribute to the context or when you add any attribute to the request, it will be notified. Similarly, when you add any attribute to the session, these two methods, session created and session destroyed, will be notified. This binding listener is When you are going to add, right, that value needs to know when I am added into, when I am removed from the session.
Okay.
We want to think at attribute level, attribute side. So when I am going to add it in, when I will be added into, when I am bound into the session, when I am outbound from the session. So this one, right? This one you could understand, like third context, and we are adding the new dog object, and once the object is added, we have one listener and listening to that add method. So he will be the attribute listener. Third context attribute listener, and this one just it is getting initiated, right? So it will be third context listener, third context attribute listener. So attribute is an object set into one of the three other Servlet API. Like we can set some attributes to the context, we can set some attributes to the Servlet request, we can set some attributes into the session. Why you want to set is like if you want to send some objects from one servlet or one servlet component to other component, right? So we will set all these model objects and we will send it to the other component or JSP.
Okay.
So there are three scopes: context scope, request scope, and session scope, handled by the servlet context, servlet request, and so for a context scope we have that listeners, request scope we have listeners, and session scope also we have the listeners, right? So all the three scopes we can set attributes. So here context attribute, right? In context attribute, this context listener is setting some attributes, and servlet is getting that attribute, and servlet is again setting some concurrent users, and this servlet is setting and getting and all those things. But if you see request, right, only one way. So once a request attribute set, and it will be viewed here, but in the context attribute, context is at the application scope, right? Context is at the application scope. Anybody can, any servlet component, any context listener or any servlet or any JSP page can read and can set from the context level, application level.
Okay.
Session is like once a user logs in, right? Once you say get session, request.get session, a new session will be created. Until you invalidate the session, you can get and set the value from the session attribute.
Okay.
You can get the attribute and you can set the attributes in the session until you invalidate the session, until you log out from the application. Whereas this one, once the request comes in, you can set it, and once it sends back the response, right? So this request will be dead. That's it. Only one time. Request comes only one side. But session will be there until you invalidate. The context will be there until you restart the application.
Okay.
So whatever you set to the request object will be leaving, whatever the attributes you set for the request object, right? It will be leaving only for short time. For session, whatever the attributes you set for the session, right? It will be for until you invalidate the session, until the user logs out. But the context, whatever the attributes you set at the context level will be there until you restart the application.
Okay.
So API methods for attributes are exactly the same in every interface: get attribute, set attribute, remove attribute, and get attribute name, which is enumeration of attribute name. And how do you make context attribute set safe? So here is the problem. Here in context side, we are setting like email addresses. This is the email address. We have set email address is the key and value. We have set it. This servlet has set an email address like something like abc@gmail.com. This servlet is getting it. Again, right? Another servlet can override this email address.
Okay.
At the same time, this servlet can get it. Actually, there is a collision. There could be a collision happening here.
Okay.
Let's say two threads. These two components are trying to access this email address, which is already used by the servlet. He is writing some data. At the same time, these two threads are trying to access the data from this. These two threads are trying to get the value of the admin email from the context.
Okay.
So what could happen is there could be a data collision and it will throw it will throw the thread safe exception.
Yeah.
So how we can have a thread safe collection is like we can use a synchronized method where we have it here, right? Okay. We can use a synchronized get servlet context so that only one thread, so the whatever the thread which is coming first, right, it will put a lock on this servlet context object. So only one thread can enter into this, all the other threads needs to wait.
Okay.
So this synchronized is like thread safety. So synchronized means only one thread can access the context attribute. All the other threads needs to wait until this block is completed. Until he sets and until he releases.
Okay.
Okay. So there are two models like single threaded model and send request to polls.
Yeah.
So we are focusing on this way actually. So here if you select single threaded model, every request will be handled by only one thread. So there will be a lot of delay in time. But here all the requests we're going to, there are two models actually, multi-threaded model and single threaded model in handling the request in a web application. So mostly they are migrated into multi-thread model. Like all the requests, right? It will be once first request comes. So this servlet will be picked and one thread will be created. This thread is going to take care of this servlet and this request with this servlet. So once a thread is completed its task, it will sit in the thread pool.
Yeah.
So it will wait in thread pool. If second request comes, again the thread which is in the thread pool, right? It will be picked up and we will process the request for the second one.
Okay.
So it so that we can have multiple requests and multiple threads and multiple servlets serving the service for the request.